Good morning. My name is Nishia Ikezoe, and I serve as a management and program analyst here at Federal Student Aid. Prior to joining FSA, I did over a decade as a financial aid administrator and a senior director of financial aid. So I know very well what you all do, and I want to say welcome, and we are so very happy that you are here on behalf of FSA. I am here this morning to introduce our Chief Operating Officer, Richard Lucas. Before I introduce Richard, though, I do want to take a moment and say thank you to all of our volunteers from FSA. Thank you. People worked hard over the last 3 days, and we are very, very, very appreciative. And again, we are also excited that you are here. And now, it is my honor to introduce Richard Lucas, Acting Chief Operating Officer of Federal Student Aid at the U.S. Department of Education. Mr. Lucas began decades of public service to his role. He began his career at the department as a co-op student in the Office of Inspector General and went on to serve in several key roles, including auditor, legislative liaison, and criminal investigator before joining Federal Student Aid. Over time, he rose to become FSA's Chief Financial Officer, where he led the management of complex federal financial systems and programs and stewardships of taxpayer resources. His leadership and service were recognized with the Presidential Rank Award in 2022. Most recently, he served as Assistant Secretary and Chief Financial Officer for the department's Office of Finance and Operations, advising senior leadership on financial management, human capital, and grant administration across the department. As acting COO of Federal Student Aid, Mr. Lucas is focused on strengthening accountability, transparency, and service while ensuring that the nation's student aid programs continue to support millions of students and families pursuing higher education. Please join me in welcoming Richard Lucas.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the third day of this conference. I'm super excited to be here, and thank you, Nishia, for that introduction, and thank you for introducing me to your family yesterday when I was on the floor. It seemed very lovely, and I appreciate that invitation. So this is my first FSA conference, like ever. And so I'm so happy that it's here in person. And I was thinking that perhaps they did it because it was like a party for me to welcome me back to Federal Student Aid. But alas, Meg and the team were working on this long before I ever got back to Federal Student Aid, and I appreciate all the work that they've done to make this possible. So what I've witnessed over the last couple of days is a lot of excitement, a lot of energy, and one of the things that it reminds me of is how much I really love my job. I really do love it. And from what I'm hearing in the conversations that you all are having and the questions you're asking, that maybe one or two of you really love your job. So I'm going to ask, and I'm going to ask the people in the Polaris as well as the atrium to raise your hand if you really love your job. Okay, now I don't see everybody raising their hand. So I've got to meet some of you, but I have not met a lot of you, and that's going to change, like right now. So let me see those hands again. There should be just as many hands as there were before. Good morning. Can I ask you to stand? Hey, how are you?
Well, how are you?
Good. What is your name?
I am Ginny Johnson.
And where do you work?
I work for Columbia College Chicago.
And how long have you been in the higher ed community?
Two.
If you care to say.
Okay. So I'm going on my 29th year.
Great. And what do you love about your job?
I love helping students achieve their education. So I was a transfer student myself. I'm particularly fond of transfer students. I had struggled to complete my education, so I'm really, really dedicated to getting students where they need to be.
Fantastic. Now, do you know the person next to you?
I do not.
Okay, we're talking about partnership and collaboration. So you're going to get to meet her. You want to stand up? What is your name?
Tara O'Neill,
And where do you work?
Marquette University,
And how long have you been in the industry?
30 years.
Wow. Congratulations to that. And why don't you tell us what you love about your job?
I love helping students, and I like it when they don't know that I even did it.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you all so much. Appreciate it. So I think I'm supposed to go to the stage, so let me hurry up and do that. So, hello again. I really do appreciate the enthusiasm for day 3 of this training conference, and a Friday, on top of that. I think by now you have had a full 2 days of sessions packed with key information and detailed guidance, side conversations that you're having with your colleagues in the hallways, and perhaps more than a few cups of coffee. I think you've talked about key changes made in the Working Families Tax Cut Act, including common sense loan limits, workforce Pell, school eligibility changes. You've dug into FAFSA updates, cybersecurity standards, and repayment system impacts. In other words, you have been living the complexity of federal student aid in real time and in rapid succession. Before I continue, I want to acknowledge something. When federal student aid implements policy change, you operationalize it. When systems shift, you translate them. When students are confused, you steady them. And when something breaks, you feel it first. That is why this in-person conference matters. And that is why your role really matters. For those of you, again, who I have not met, my name is Richard Lucas, and I serve as the Acting Chief Operating Officer of Federal Student Aid. And to me, that continues to be a very humbling sentence to say out loud. As I have said to others, including maybe some of you, I did not seek this role. I wasn't campaigning for it, but when the opportunity came, unexpected, complex, and high stakes, I said yes. I said yes because sometimes in life you answer the call not because it's easy, but because it matters. And this work, our shared work, has never mattered more. Let me take you on a little journey and share some of my background. My commitment to public service and the higher education community didn't start when I was appointed this position. I have nearly 40 years of experience at the U.S. Department of Education. Yet the department isn't where my public service career began, so we must go back a little bit more in time. I began my federal career as a GS2 clerk typist. Now, maybe some of you remember the days when you schlepped down to OPM building and you took a typing test, which, by the way, I failed multiple times. But the proctor stayed, probably way past her normal hours, like so many of you all do at your schools, and gave me multiple chances, suggesting that I slow down, take a breath, and feel one with the keys of that IBM Selectric typewriter. I ultimately passed. I think the sun had set by then, but I was placed with an agency. And I'll be honest, I wasn't very good at that job, which the multiple tests should have told me that maybe that was not a good career for me. I didn't come in polished or confident. I came in really grateful for a job, but really unsure about my future. In fact, I wasn't even planning to go to college. I just assumed that I would take over the family farm. But that changed when my grandfather passed away and left money for his grandchildren's education. One quiet decision, no fanfare, but it changed the direction of my life. Education opened up a door I didn't know how to open myself. Fast forward, you heard in my introduction, I became a co-op student, working while earning my degree. I learned discipline, how to show up, how to improve, how to take responsibility, and yes, how not to make excuses. What that experience taught me, and what has stayed with me nearly 4 decades in public service, is simple. Talent is everywhere. Opportunity is not. Let me repeat that. Actually, why don't we all repeat that? Talent is everywhere. Opportunity is not. And when opportunity depends on the programs we design and administer, failure is not an option. That is why we are here. We do this work for the student who is the first in their family to go to college. We do this work for the single parent trying to finish a degree at night while raising a family. We do this work for students and families navigating the FAFSA form, wondering whether or not it will result in the aid that they need. We do it for the student who believes education will open doors and now needs a loan repayment system that is functional and understandable. And yes, we do this work for the taxpayer who may never meet the students they support. Over the last 2 days, we've covered an extraordinary amount of ground. You began with loan changes, driving into new loan limits and statutory exceptions. You examined both the legislative provisions and the FSA system solutions required to implement them. That pairing, policy and systems, is exactly where success or failure lives. You explored school eligibility changes because access to Title IV is not just a compliance question, it's an institutional viability question. You spent time on FAFSA updates because you know better than anyone that simplification only works if execution matches ambition. You heard about the workforce Pell eligibility, an important shift that broadens opportunity but requires careful implementation. You examined cybersecurity and how to safeguard student data, not as an abstract IT standard, but as a real liability and trust issue for your institutions. You discussed the future of federal loan repayment and system impacts, because what happens on the servicing side always echoes back to the campuses. And today you're engaged in sessions on federal update, foreign gifts and contract reporting, default prevention, FAFSA listening session, and potential threats facing your institutions. I run through all of these because this 3-day agenda tells a story. It tells a story of a system under pressure, but in motion. Our federal student assistance programs, and with it federal student aid, is in a period of intense but exciting transformation. Over the last year, we have been creating the new income-driven repayment assistance plan, implementing new common sense loan limits on graduate programs, and empowering financial aid administrators like you to set lower caps for lower earning programs. Overhauling and modernizing our IT systems like Partner Connect to improve your user experience. Strengthening cybersecurity and fraud prevention to ensure that every single taxpayer dollar is spent effectively. And all this has been happening while borrowers, institutions, lawmakers, and the public have been watching closely and often critically. Let me be very clear about something. Anything that interferes with students and borrowers receiving accurate information, timely support, or fair treatment is unacceptable. When systems struggle, students and borrowers feel it immediately. When data is inaccurate or delayed, trust erodes. When processes are unclear, confusion multiplies. Operational excellence is not optional. It is the foundation of credibility in these programs. I do want to pause for a moment, as we have throughout the 3 days, and acknowledge what has gone right. You are seeing federal student aid making meaningful progress on several priorities that are important to students, families, borrowers, and you. Let's talk about the FAFSA form, which has been highlighted over the last couple of days. After the most challenging launch in program history, we focused relentlessly on operational correction. Over the last 12 months, we launched the 2627 FAFSA form earlier than ever before. We shortened the processing time. We addressed data quality issues. We enhanced the contributor invite process, added a new earnings indicator to provide clear information to students and families, and prevented more than $1 billion in attempted fraud. We are already seeing results from our continued efforts to implement historic legislation, which represents a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to improve the federal student loan programs, delivering for both students and taxpayers. Regardless of where one stands politically, its implications for loans and servicing are real, operational, and immediate. From FSA's perspective, it means new statutory requirements that must be turned into operational realities. Changes to loan terms, repayment structure, and borrower pathways, adjustments to servicing workflows, systems, and communication, and increased importance of accuracy, consistency, and for students and borrowers. No legislation succeeds if students and borrowers do not understand their options. If systems cannot support the changes, or if organizations are forced to operate in ambiguity, it creates a lot of problems. That is why our focus around implementation is grounded in 3 principles. Clarity. Students, parents, and borrowers must understand what applies to them and when. Operational readiness. Our partners, including you, must have the tools, timelines, and data needed to execute effectively. Consistency and fairness. We must deliver similar treatment across the board. FSA will continue to approach this work deliberately, sequencing requirements, strengthening guidance, and engaging partners early, because rushed implementation helps no one. But let me be upfront, implementation matters more than intent, and we, the collective we, will deliver this on time. Another critical area that we have made progress in has been around data. Over the last year, FSA has focused intently on improving data accuracy and reconciliation, strengthening real-time reporting capabilities, and using data to inform oversight, not just retrospective compliance. This matters because data is not just an internal management tool. It is how we detect problems early, ensure consistent treatment, and defend the integrity of the federal student assistance programs that we are entrusted to administer. Clean data is not glamorous, but it is foundational. It is one of the key pillars I introduced when I was appointed in this position. Real-time, accurate data is a must in driving decisions in our business. It sounds like we've been doing a lot, and we certainly have, but what does the path forward look like? For starters, it is going back to basics. But don't mistake that for retreating. It is focusing and grounding ourselves in the fundamentals of great public service and using them as the launch pad for real innovation. In 1998, Congress designated federal student aid as a performance-based organization, a PBO, the first of its kind in government. And that designation came with a mandate, which stands as my clear vision for FSA. Deliver world-class service, be accountable for results, operate with flexibility, focus relentlessly on outcomes, and reduce cost. FSA was never meant to simply process forms. It was meant to lead, to show how federal operations could be more agile, more accountable, and more effective. In a couple of years, we will reach the 30th anniversary of that designation. That milestone should prompt an honest question. Are we living up to that promise? And I would argue that the answer depends not just on FSA, but on how well we partner with the financial aid community. And let's be honest, when FSA struggles operationally, you feel it immediately. You feel it in more questions from students and parents. You feel it in greater administrative burden. You feel it in compliance risk. You feel it in institutional strain and in student frustration. So let me say this to all of you. Anything that disrupts students' access to aid is unacceptable, full stop. That is why operational excellence at FSA is not an internal management goal. It is a shared obligation to the higher education ecosystem. The role of financial administrators, your role is a big part of that. Policy decisions made in Washington only succeed if they can be implemented responsibly on campuses and understood by students and their families. Our success should not be measured solely on meeting policy deadlines, but by whether our students and families can actually navigate the system with confidence and positive outcomes. That's why I value your voice as a reality check for the system. We need your insights. What's working? What is breaking? And what unintended consequences look like in practice. While we strive to be more agile, modernized, and efficient, we are committing to knowing that what we're doing and designing and implementing helps you do your job better. Today's listening session is a great opportunity for you to share what you are hearing, what you are experiencing. So let's talk a little bit about technology. Our plan is to simplify and modernize FSA's currently fragmented IT system into one that can fully deliver on the intent of the PBO legislation by responsibly deploying modern technology and artificial intelligence to create a modern, high-performing servicing ecosystem, transparent, real-time, reliable data, a borrower experience that is clear, consistent, and human-centered, a workforce supported, not replaced, by automation, stronger, smarter oversight of servicers, and reduced cost and risk to taxpayers. Artificial intelligence, when used responsibly, can help us detect fraud early, identify servicing issues early, improve borrower communications, as we have done with Aiden, and allow human staff to focus on complex, high-value interactions. Technology should reduce friction, not introduce it. For example, we have tasks that every day that you all are faced with, which is helping students who really cannot remember their studentaid.gov username and password. And we know it hasn't always been easy for a student to retrieve their account and their credentials while they're sitting there in your office. That's why, using a technology solution, we did make it possible for students, parents, and borrowers to look up their studentaid.gov account online without having to call our contact center. This simple yet impactful change, we hope, will allow you to spend more time advising students about their financial aid, that troubleshooting login issues can be put aside and you can focus on helping them. Real-time FAFSA processing is another significant solution that will modernize FSA's part of the financial aid ecosystem. As you heard Wednesday during the FAFSA update session, we want students who submit the FAFSA form to be able to immediately see their confirmed student aid index and federal Pell Grant eligibility instead of having to wait 1 to 3 days. And you will be able to see real-time information in the FAFSA portal, partner portal. So stay tuned, this is coming really soon. Let's shift our focus on the work needed to strengthen the financial health of the federal student loan portfolio, which is nearing $1.7 trillion. Today, less than 40% of all borrowers are in repayment, which is a national crisis that we must address immediately. That is not someone else's problem. That is our collective challenge. We are committed to working with institutions of higher education like yours to improve loan repayment outcomes, which is another key area where our partnership comes into play. Default prevention is not a box to check. It is sustained, proactive engagement with former students. When borrowers fall behind and do not meet their obligation to repay their loans, it affects their financial futures, including the ability to buy a home, purchase a car, and achieve other key life milestones. In guidance that we published last month, we reminded all institutions of their obligations to conduct proactive and sustained outreach to their former students who are delinquent or in default of their student loans. Such measures will help ensure that institutions will not face high cohort default rates and lose access to federal student assistance. Our federal student loan servicers are conducting comprehensive outreach programs to at-risk borrowers, but we need your help and leadership as well. At Federal Student Aid, we want to provide clear, easy-to-understand financial literacy information and resources. We'll reach students, parents, and borrowers through our flagship website, studentaid.gov, as well as through outreach events with partner organizations, social media, and webinars. Effective default prevention means we have to partner with federal and state agencies and others to promote informed decision-making that helps borrowers fully understand the obligations and responsibilities of taking out loans to pay for education or career training beyond high school. I hope that you all will attend the session this afternoon on default prevention. It is not just informative, it is really essential. So let me share 3 commitments I believe must continue to guide us. First, forward focus. We cannot be anchored to past disruptions. We must build a system that works now and adapts quickly. Second, bold accountability. Performance matters, data matters, outcomes matter. We must confront issues early and fix them decisively. Third, relentless service. Students, families, and taxpayers are our North Star. Every policy decision must ultimately translate into clarity and access for them. As you move through today's session, I encourage you to continue doing what you've done so well this week. Ask the hard questions. Share what works. Tell us where friction exists. Identify where clarity is needed. This conference is not a one-way briefing. It is a working partnership. We are not finished building the next version of federal student aid. We are in the middle of it, and the next 6 months will be about disciplined execution, steady, focused, and accountable. Thank you for the work you do every day. Thank you for your candor this week, and thank you for your partnership in strengthening the federal student aid system for the students who depend on it. I want to close with something personal. In equestrian show jumping, which is a passion of mine, success isn't just about finishing the course. It is about how you ride it, with balance, control, confidence, and heart. You cannot clear a jump by looking backward. You cannot focus on the rail you just dropped. You must commit to the line ahead. And that's where we are. The course is demanding, the scrutiny is real, the stakes are high, but we are not riding it alone. You, financial aid administrators, are the steady hands on the reins of this system. You turn complexity into opportunity, you turn policy into access, you turn an aid offer into something real. And as the leader of federal student aid, I am committed in leading with integrity, listening with humility, and acting with urgency, because the stakes are too high for anything less. So let's take that jump together. Let's strengthen the system together, and let's ensure that access to higher education remains a real promise, not just a policy goal. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and now let's make the most of this last day of the conference.